Hey folks, in the world of carpentry and woodworking, precision and efficiency are paramount. Whether you're, putting together delicate trim pieces or assembling maybe intricate moldings on furniture, using a pin nailer can make the world of difference. Ridgid recently released an 18-volt, 23-gauge pin nailer, allowing them to join other major tool manufacturers to now have a full lineup of cordless nailing solutions. The Ridgid claims that this pin nailer will shoot up to 1,875 pins on a full charge, and they tested that with a 2 amp hour battery. Now, let's take a little bit of a closer look at this pin nailer. We tested it here in the shop, as well as we used it in the field on some projects. So for me, probably what drew my attention to this nailer in the beginning was the size, right? So it's got a really compact size. It's got a great comfortable grip. The pin nailer actually it's lightweight. It weighs 3.3 pounds. And it also has a really nice line of sight, which is important to finished carpenters when you're doing moldings and trim and you're holding the thing over your head. So nice line of sight. It also has a large depth of drive adjustment, large and in charge, and it's located on the right side on the top. It's got kind of a gnarled or knurled wheel for easy adjustments, and the wheel clicks, so it's got positive clicks as you adjust it. So it'll click, click, click. I didn't test the full range of the depth like I've done in other nailers, and I'll talk a little bit about that, the depth adjustment, responsiveness and stuff. I'll talk about that a little bit later. The nailer holds 1/2 inch to 1 3/8 inch standard pin nails, which is standard in the industry. The magazine has kind of a bottom pinch release mechanism at the bottom of the magazine. That's going to open the slide, and then when you close it, there's a little window there, like a lot of nailers have, that allow you to see the pins, what you have, whether it's loaded or not. So you get a visual on that. A bright LED light illuminates the workpiece, and we really, really liked its unique positioning. It's kind of positioned at a 45-degree angle, and it really does kind of shoot a nice beam right on the workplace for your general fastening area. There are 2 large hard plastic no-mar tips that come with the nailer. The tips, when applied, do not obscure your line of sight, which we really appreciated, and they hold securely in place. It's really hard to remove them once you put them on, which I like that because it's a pet peeve of mine in other nailers. They fall off all the time. So this was really nice that they got these to fit tight. The reserve tip actually clips on the lower rear of the magazine. Now, as fastener jams can happen for lots of reasons, right? Double feed, whatever, dirty nailer. It should be noted, we didn't have any fastening problems, any nailing jams or anything in the field or shop testing. Ridgid does provide an onboard hex key that basically will remove the top plate. The hex key sits at the bottom of the nail magazine, and it really secures nicely in this kind of channeled slot. It clips in. Honestly, I doubt this thing will ever fall off and get lost. Another pet peeve that we've had on other nailers. A feature that we also liked was that there are keyholes on that top plate when you remove it for jams. This allows you to just loosen the screw slightly, slide the plate off, clear your jam, lubricate, clean, whatever you have to do for maintenance, and then put it on so you do not have to risk losing your screws. The Ridgid nailer has a traditional style double trigger system. If you've used pin nailers on small trim parts, you know that the contact tip, when depressed, you can move your trim piece, right? So that double style trigger eliminates this frustration, and most pin nailers, all pin nailers probably use it. With the dual trigger system, basically that first trigger, the lower trigger, serves as your safety switch, and then you have to pull and hold that in, and then the second switch will fire your fastener. We used the Ridgid pin nailer to build a custom fireplace mantle and do some kind of an accent wall. And the mantle was kind of cool. It had all mitered edges, so it had to be really tight and precise. We used 1 3/8 nails for this, pin nails, and we basically used it to secure the mitered edges with tape and then clamped it while the glue dried. Worked great. On that same project, we did that accent wall and the back panel and trim pieces. We used a pin nailer to work on pre-painted trim, also our shiplap wall covering. With the pre-painted trim, it worked great. It was perfect. It's a perfect tool for that, right? It leaves very tiny unobtrusive holes requiring very little touch-up at the end, which is nice. The pin nailer features what Ridgid calls clean drive technology, and I wasn't 100% sure what this meant. Maybe the marketing could be a little bit better about explaining it, but they basically claim that the nailer, it enables the operator, I guess, to shoot finished nails, pin nails, flush at any angle, reducing trim blowout. So I interpreted that to hold the nail at different angles, and we tested that here in the shop. Straight on, all the nails we fired set perfectly. I think we're using Poplar to test this. Left and right angles, all the nails fired were set full depth setting, but slightly proud of the wood surface. So that just told me that you really got to be, you got to make sure you have good contact surface. You can't just tilt the nailer and fire it. Forward angle, this position is not scored or tested because as you do that and it hits the magazine, it lifts the nose off the workpiece. And since that tool comes off the workpiece, it's just not a safe way to fire, and you're obviously not going to get flush nails. Rearwards though, when you tilt it rear or like this, all the nails were set acceptable, which is great. We also conducted a pin nail penetration test, a depth of drive penetration test, on what we felt was probably the most popular species that contractors and carpenters, finished carpenters, use out in the field. Pine, poplar, red oak, maple, pre-painted maple like cabinet trim, which is usually a soft maple, and poplar molding and trim. On the poplar test, we were able to set the nailer just shy of max, a few clicks on the depth of drive, and all the pins were set perfect. When we got to red oak, that test was done with the nailer set to max depth setting, and almost all of the pin nails were a little proud, teeny bit proud. When we applied light pressure to the nailer, pushing a little bit, more than I would normally push, the nails were driven flush, and when added a little more pressure, they sank below the grain, the surface, but they would leave some firing pin marks. For comparison, I ran my pneumatic pin nailer, and everything with normal pressure was below the surface. In this hardwood scenario though, the cordless nailer obviously didn't have the same power as a pneumatic nailer. Now we took some pre-painted maple trim and that we had from a previous remodel. We cut some 45 miters and we fastened them into the painted trim. This is a very practical infield installation carpenters encounter on every remodel. This test showed inconsistent depth settings when pressure is applied to the tool though, we were able to improve our depth setting. I'll discuss this a little bit more as we get down to room to improvement because there's a reason for this. So let's talk about applying pressure to a pin nailer. When joining trim in the field, miter trim, whatever, there's a fine line between pushing or applying too much pressure and fastening, right? The goal is to hold the miter trim in place without moving it and without putting too much pin pressure. That's why these pin nailers have double style triggers to eliminate too much pressure. So you could just hold it there and doop, put the pin in. This nailer, let's move on to dry fire lockout. This nailer will dry fire lockout from 0 to 10 nails. Cool thing about it is when the dry fire is activated, the LED light will flash rapidly to let you know the reload, which I really like that feature. Okay, room for improvement. In our testing, the cordless nailer struggled with hardwood trim application. After several discussions with the team at Ridgid, we discovered that part of this issue is that the 2.0 amp hour battery pack that was sent to us for testing. The tool is sold as a bare tool or as a kit with a 2 amp hour battery. The engineers at Ridgid pointed out that the tool performs better in hardwood applications with a larger max output 4.0 amp hour battery pack. Now this does make sense as we've seen much better performance on higher demand applications using larger density packs, not only just with Ridgid, but with other brands. So if users want to use a cordless pin nailer in hardwood applications, you should ramp up a little bit to a 4 amp hour battery pack for best performance and power. Okay, price. The Ridgid is going to sell for $219 and it can be purchased at Home Depot. I believe. Overall thoughts, I've always considered Ridgid the hidden gem in the tool industry. They really do some nice stuff. By adding the 18-volt cordless pin nailer to their arsenal, they now have a complete cordless lineup of nailers. And this pin nailer, it shined in poplar and the pine we tested on. It struggled in the wood species as it got harder, like red oak and maple. For the harder type of species, users should be sure to use, you really need to make sure you use a larger 4 amp hour battery pack so you get that maximum performance. Look, in the world of pin nailers, Ridgid sits well for carpenters, DIYers, and serious enthusiasts. If you currently operate on a Ridgid 18-volt battery platform, this nailer is something you want to take a look at. It's going to round off your nailer arsenal. I'm Rob Robillard. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment. We love hearing from you guys. And please subscribe and hit that notification bell. We appreciate your support.